Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Repitch. I'm David along with Richard.
Hey guys.
And today, Richard has finally seen Black Panther 2.
When did it come out?
It came out mid-November, I think.
So it took me a month to watch it. But David, how could you? I blame you. You did not convey how even though this was in your top 9 movies of the year, convey how great this movie was. So good.
You can't say that. The first thing I
joking.
texted you was, "This is a top 5 Marvel movie of all time."
Like when you said that, I'm like, there is no flipping way. Like just out of sheer numbers, like alone, like. But David, this is probably the best sequel movie.
Yeah, I mean, unless you want to throw in Winter Soldier and things like that. In there.
I think this is better than Winter Soldier.
Fair.
Yeah, like just third act alone. I'm like, okay, all right. So we could talk about this forever. This movie. Do you have stats for us before we go on?
I actually do.
Yeah, let's talk about the stats. Because I'm so curious.
So, as you know, this movie did very well.
I'm not surprised.
Domestically, it did opening weekend. It started off with 181 million.
Oh, that's nice. Okay.
Really great, which is crazy.
More than Black Adam's, but okay.
More than Black Adam, like for the entire run of Black Adam,
which is straight to HBO, like a month, not even a month, which is a really bad sign. But go on.
Another rabbit hole for that topic.
I'm gonna watch that movie soon, so we can talk about that. But go
on. So domestically, it did 440 mil. And then international box office, it did 380 mil. And then worldwide box office, it ended up doing 821 mil.
Oh my gosh.
Great movie, almost hitting the $1 billion mark. So the budget for this was 250 mil. So it did very, very well.
That's and like that's not counting the toys and like product placement. Like, wow, well deserved. This is a great movie.
Yeah, and I think this movie, it had a tough task of trying to continue a storyline without its main actor. Like,
how do you make a Black Panther movie without the Black Panther, without Chadwick Boseman?
Yeah.
And as, what do you call it? They did, you said it, I think you said it in one of the recordings, like they did the best they could have in a very terrible situation.
Yeah. And
I completely agree. I think, they did a good enough, like this movie is about grief and like dealing with grief. And I can't recall a Marvel movie talking about such a serious issue and ending it well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Iron Man 3 talks about PTSD, which is like, oh, really interesting. But like Tony Stark heals himself by throwing his thing in it. Like there's no resolution. Like there's nothing. But like this is like, oh, from beginning to end, they did a great job.
Yeah, agreed. And still, you see at the end of it too, like it's not like she's still dealing with a lot of it, but she's learned a lot with what happened.
Yeah. And speaking of that cast, oh my goodness, I love how like the first act was just the 3 women. I can't pronounce names.
The actresses, Letitia, right?
Yep, Letitia,
Angela Bassett, and then you got Denai Guerrero.
Yeah, and as I was watching it and how like flawlessly they're talking to each other, they need to do this and find this person and stuff like that. And I'm like, wow, like I don't think there's a Marvel movie where 3 women characters are like talking the most and like leading the role, which I'm like, this is huge. This is great.
Yeah, I do agree with that. And I think, Angela Bassett held the movie together. You felt the weight of this movie through a lot of the acting for these guys.
She killed it as a queen. Like the first scene, she's like, I'm the queen of Wakanda. Doesn't mean we don't have a king. Like, I'm still mama boss. Like you guys can't come to my like it's great. Like I loved it. Like I don't know. Do we ever talk about Black Panther 1? Do we ever review it?
Yeah, I think you might have repitched that one.
Did I really? Am I that
Think so.
psychotic? I don't remember repitching it, but like if the probably the weakest part, I feel like still feel like it was a Black Panther one was the main Shuri and Nakia.
Yep.
Like they
Right.
were the weak. But like it was a lot of characters in it. Like I don't blame that. Like Michael B. Jordan was just captivating from that whole first Black Panther movie.
Yeah.
But like, and you know, like after Chadwick Boseman passed away, and I'm like, oh, they're making Black Panther 3, and like, it's pretty obvious who they're gonna make the new Black Panther. It's gonna be Shuri, her sister. I'm like, I don't know if she can do it. Like, I don't know if she has the acting chops or what. Because I've never seen her in anything else, but like, she held it. She held her own.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think
Yeah.
she's surprisingly like came out and she, like you said, held her own, and she seems like a whole new character. A lot
Yeah.
more depth to her.
Mhm.
And you want to see more of her after
Oh
this.
yeah, which is like great. Like I loved how the mom has dealt with her grief, the loss of her son, and she's like the whole idea, like okay, they need to burn their funeral clothes, but Sherry's like, no, like I'm not gonna. I don't want to be here. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to deal with it. I just want to move on, work on my science stuff, and just figure stuff out. I'm like, yo, that's not acceptable way to deal with grief, but like that's very relatable. People just like let me just work and not process that.
Yeah, and it's kind of they touch upon this interesting thing about like science versus the spiritual too, like
Oh yeah.
with her character, and I
Mm-hmm.
thought that was a very interesting thing too, because like part of it, by the end of it, like she kind of, in order to really become this Black Panther, she has to like believe in everything that their culture believes in,
Oh yeah.
and like of course she has her doubts, and then but
I mean, we want to talk about this chronologically, but I don't think that's possible.
yeah,
But
and it's
like,
definitely not looking out like that.
okay, so we'll do this. We'll talk about the good, some bad, and maybe even try to pitch Black Panther 3. But let's just go shotgun, go crazy with Black Panther.
All right,
Like the good. Let's talk about the good first. Yo, how does it feel to have your co-host be a genius slash psychic?
for what? Oh, because of the Queen.
Yeah, I swear. Look here back before, like maybe a month or a couple of weeks before Black Panther 2 came out,
Mhm.
and we're talking about what's gonna be about. I swear I called it. Didn't I not call? I'm like, they're gonna kill the queen off. Like she has to die.
There has to be some way, but you did call it.
Yeah. How did you feel when you saw that? Like, oh shit, Richard was right.
No, actually, to be honest, I didn't remember.
Oh, you didn't? Oh man. When I saw that scene and like she was just dead, I was laughing so hard in the inside. I'm like, hold it in, Richard. Don't laugh outside in public because you're gonna look like a psychotic person. I'm like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I actually called that she died.
But like, I will say this: like, when you're watching the first bit of the movie, it
Yeah.
feels like it's heading in that direction.
Oh, it did. It does. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I think for the character Shuri, like, it was like, the Black Panther character died off screen, which is a good thing because you don't want an actor or like CGI. I'm so glad they did not CGI him in, which they easily could have.
Oh my gosh, that first like 5-10 minutes of that
Oh,
movie,
yeah.
almost just like no music, just them frantically running around, and like
Mhm.
how closely they related to the actual Chadwick Boseman's actual death. Like it's,
Oh, yeah.
I think it like
It's great.
yeah, it's so
It's like
good.
it feels real. Like for a split second, I forgot I was watching a glossy Marvel movie.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah,
And, like,
and
It's
it's great.
I think, yeah, for the first 10-15 minutes I was like choked up. Like I was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh.
I was like, oh shoot, Marvel, you really bringing like you're bringing the heavy hits, and like when the like Angela Bassett, she has that line where I'm so bad with names. What's her name?
Who was
Not Lupita.
Uh,
Okoye. Okoye loses her daughter. She goes. A daughter goes to Atlanta, and like she strips her of her title, and like Okoye's like, I did so much for this team. Like I did so much. Like you can't fire me. And Angela Bassett just like says,
Yes.
I am the queen of the most powerful nation in the world, and my entire family is gone. Have I not given everything? Oh, I was like, dang. I was like, oh my goodness, she's so gonna die, but she's so good.
No, that speech right there. That definitely
So good.
staple speech, and I think that's one part everybody's gonna remember.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's the part where everybody's talking about like, oh man, she deserves an Oscar for that.
I seriously like it is. I don't think there's anything as I've seen as like again they're not gonna win because it's a Marvel movie, but like she definitely should be nominated.
No, yeah, I think the weight that she brought into that
Oh yeah,
speech, oh my gosh,
so real.
I think just like watching it in theaters too, like how quiet it was, and like how like if you could feel like everybody's really like watching and listening.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you and I watched in two different. You watched it when it came out, and I
Yeah.
watched it a month later with like two people in the theaters, which is the best thing in the world. Like, were people unknowingly clapping at random scenes?
Um,
That's my
actually,
that's my biggest pet peeve.
there was like one or two, but surprisingly, it wasn't like that. It wasn't
What
as
were they
crazy.
clapping at?
It was definitely like whatever action scenes there were, but like it was very, it was minimal at best. Not,
Okay.
I think the most clapping out of the Marvel movies I've seen is definitely Endgame. But
Oh yeah. I
that's
mean, like
that's
that's a
understand. I understand why.
Of course.
you're clapping in that one.
the last act, the last fighting scene. Yeah, I don't blame you. I hate it, but whatever. But yeah, like you know what's so good about this movie? That like to be honest, David, I think this movie. Okay, I'm gonna make a bold statement right here. I think Black Panther 2 is a better movie than Black Panther 1 because it has a stronger third act.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like Black Panther 1, it's gonna go down in history as like one of the most iconic because like it builds a world that's so believable. Like it's never gonna be like it's huge. Like I wouldn't be surprised if that movie goes down in the archives. You know, like it's historic, but one of the weakest like a very typical weak third act. That was super disappointing when it comes.
Yeah, I mean, just CGI alone was kind of like
It's very
pretty
like
whack.
that. But like with this one, it's just like, oh man, it does a pretty great job. And you know, I don't want to go with the mid-ending credit scene because I want to like give that weight. But like, they do a great job.
No, I think with every sequel that comes, it's expected that the bar is raised.
Oh, yeah.
There's gonna be so much more to it, and Black Panther 2 did not disappoint.
Oh,
I think when you're the most powerful nation in the world,
Yeah.
it's like how do you combat that? Like how do you fight
Exactly.
that? Oh, like and there happens to be another nation that just as strong, or like they have access to these same
Vibranium, not vibranium.
vibranium.
Is it called vibranium?
Yeah.
Wait, what did you think about Atlantis and Namor?
I will say, I'm kind of glad that they kind of switched it up. They kind of brought it down to earth a bit more, made it more Mayan.
Exactly. And like even like you see them like doing the hip hits for the like actually like Mayan stuff.
Yeah,
and like
yeah.
culturally I'm like, oh wow, like this is like really awesome representation that you don't see.
Mhm.
I don't know how faithful, how great they are, but like that's pretty good.
Yeah, I think I don't know too much about the culture and to really say too much about it, but I think from what they've shown, I think I like that direction that they went and decided to go with, rather than building a new, just a mythological like city like Atlantis.
Yeah. I mean they changed a lot in comics, but like I don't think I'm gonna hear anyone say, "Oh, I'm a big fan of the Namor character in comics." Like no one. Like, yeah, he's a huge pivotal character in the comics, but like no one's gonna like, "Oh, I like the original of this white guy in a bathing suit with feathers in his wings." Like, no, the way they read it in here is much more interesting. I mean, the way he got his name is kind of stupid, but like other than that,
Oh yeah, it's very punny.
yeah, I was like, but like we'll talk about that later. But other than that, like I liked it. It was good. Like this is what it would be like if an isolated nation that's very hostile would act.
Yeah, agreed. I think some other good points that I enjoyed about the movie is the soundtrack was amazing.
Yeah, so good. And I mean, like Rihanna, like, but we'll talk about the mid-credit scene in the end. But like, so go on. The soundtrack was great. I agree.
Soundtrack was great. I think for a 2.5 hour long movie, this was done in a very quick paced manner.
Yeah, yeah.
There's no, it didn't feel like there was a wasted minute in it.
No.
Nothing was really dragged out. And, I think obviously because of the absence of Chadwick Boseman, they gave
Mm-hmm.
a fair amount of screen time to a good amount of people. They gave
Oh
them a
yeah.
little bit more weight, a
I
lot more
agree.
importance,
Mm-hmm.
which is also hard because like when you split up that kind of time with a lot of people,
Oh
it
yeah.
gets muddied.
Which is like, one of the faults of, Black Panther one. It's just like it's so many great cast. And like, yeah, like for example, I feel like M'Baku, I love, it was like he's probably one of my top five favorite Marvel characters, MCU.
Mm.
And I loved his role in this movie as
Oh
like
yeah,
as Shuri's kind of advisor. And
yep,
he has this line about like, her mom passes away, and what she says like, you know, it's like to Sherry is like, oh, I'm not a queen, I'm still a kid, and like M'Baku says like, the world has taken too much away from you for you to still be considered a child, and I'm like, oh my goodness, writing, oh
no, I mean those wise little things from M'Baku are so
yeah,
great, and I think
so good.
he's definitely gonna play a huge part going
Oh yeah,
forward.
which he should.
Especially with no Chadwick Boseman anymore. I think
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
gonna be a big part. I think which is kind of what they hinted at towards the end of it.
yeah. He's
He's
gonna be the king, right?
that's what looks like
Yeah.
right now, and I think
Which
which
which I think he should. Yeah.
which kind of translates into like, is he gonna get Black Panther powers? Like, is
I mean, at this point, it could be synthetically made, and everyone. I mean,
right,
they have a bunch of it in the middle of the woods, nowhere, which is
right.
like, I don't know how healthy that is, but
um,
yeah. What else did you like about this movie?
I think the best part of the best thing about this movie for me was how much of a tribute it was for Chadwick Boseman.
Oh yeah.
Um, I it some you'd expect it to just be like beginning and then end,
Mm-hmm.
where like it'd be those tributes, but everywhere in the middle too, you see these little hints. They bring up T'Challa and Chadwick,
Mm-hmm.
and like
Mm-hmm.
just kind of the weight he played and how important he was to this. And you kind of feel that too. Like for me, when I saw that and heard that, it wasn't just hearing about T'Challa the character. It was Chadwick
Mm-hmm.
Boseman really.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's safe to say, I think, the way that Tony Stark, or like not Tony Stark, Robert Downey Jr. is Tony Stark. And he's that character. I think Chadwick Boseman just as equally he became that character.
Yeah.
Especially just because of the impact he had for African American culture and
Mm-hmm.
people. Being able to play this superhero for a new generation of kids.
That representation matters, and like they could have easily recasted him. Like, hey, let's make who's another young African American actor, like.
Which is that was a big argument coming into this movie, like, oh, like, because like you don't want to muddy Chadwick Boseman's contributions to this
Exactly.
by doing that, but at the same time, I heard some of the arguments for why they should recast it was the fact of representation. Oh, you're just gonna kill off this new black
Mm,
superhero character, like that's
yeah.
just kind of ruins it. But how they approached it in this movie and the way they kind of like tied a bow with it at the end of it, I think they did it in the most tasteful way that they could.
Yeah. Great job. Can we talk about that surprise cameo that we didn't expect to see when Shuri takes the Black Panther fruit?
Oh,
Well,
yes, that's
yeah.
actually my next great point.
Perfect. Bring it up, David.
So of course, next best thing for me in this movie was the interesting way they brought back Killmonger.
Yeah, Michael B. Jordan makes. I mean, I didn't expect him to be there.
Yeah, it was kind of hard to picture. It's like, how do you bring back a dead character? And
Exactly.
they did it in a very good way. It's not
Yeah.
like the what do you call it in Thor? How they just brought back like Idris Elba and they
It was
in
very
Valhalla.
very cheesy. Very
Yeah.
like, oh, like I don't know, but like this makes complete sense in the lore of Black Panther. Like Shuri wants revenge, and of course, she's not gonna see her ancestor, but she wants to see Michael B. Jordan, and she gives her that he gives her that advice, like, take what's your own, man.
Right. And that's like, that's that whole issue from that point going forward, her vengeful nature and how she's handling this grief, or how she wants to handle this grief. Yeah.
Yeah. And that fight scene with Namor, that was brutal, but that was great.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
They did slow motion in a very good way.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I don't think there was anything I'm like, ooh, that's, I mean, there was like, I think a couple of things that CGI was kind of wonky, but not enough for me to be so nitpicky here and there.
Yeah, I think overall this movie, I loved it.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if it's because there hasn't been a great Marvel movie in a long time, but I think
It could be it. No, so there has been good Marvel movies, but there hasn't been like, oh my goodness, this like changes the game a bit.
No, yeah, I mean, I've said it to you before. I think this is hands down the best movie since Endgame, like Marvel movie since Endgame, in my opinion.
No, I agree. Like, this would make, what's his name? All those like hoity-toity directors kind of like eat their shoe. Like, hey, like, this is a solid movie.
For real. And, I'm curious how they're going to keep this story going.
Yeah.
I will say, like, all the other cameos, the way they brought Martin Freeman back.
Oh, he was delightful in this.
Yeah, I mean, he was a good part in the first one too, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think he was enjoyable, and the way they also tied in Julia Dreyfus.
I don't know, that was kind of a weak part for me. Like, yeah, I'm not looking forward to whatever Marvel has cooking up there, but
I think there's a lot of build up in this movie too that I think, kind of like you're saying right now, those are the small issues I have with this movie.
yeah.
But they were able to tie in enough of it to like keep it well within what they were trying to do.
I agree, but it did feel like a whiplash. Like, oh, like, I don't really want to see her face right now. Like, I don't care. Yeah. But yeah. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we talk about that mid-credit scene?
We'll talk about issues in a little bit, or
Yeah, we'll talk about issues right after that.
Okay, all right.
I think this is probably the best mid-credit scene we've ever seen. Any end credit, mid-credit. This is probably the best one. Because, like, like, we see, like, what's her name? Shuri. She's finally burning her her moaning cloak, trying to move on. Then we see, Lupita come with, like, T'Challa's son, and, like, introduces him, and, like, oh, this is your aunt. Like, his name is T'Challa. Like, he's the prince of etc. Like, and we hear Rihanna. Like, Rihanna sings. Like, you get Rihanna to play a song. Like, I heard. Like, that's like the only thing I've known about Black Panther. I'm like, the whole movie, I'm like, when is this song gonna come up? Because, like, it's iconic. I'm like, at this point, I've listened to it so many times, and they played in the last couple minutes of the movie. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is so good.
Yeah, those last bits where, like, she's like where Shuri's mourning. It goes to those flashbacks of Chadwick Boseman. You can't help but, like, kind of choke up there. Then, like you're saying, that mid-credit scene where they keep the legacy alive, keep the name alive. It's very tasteful. I think they did a great job.
So great. I can hear the naysayers like, oh, they just want to bring up a new Black Panther. So I'm like, no, like, this is it perfectly explains why Lupita wasn't there during the end game and stuff like that. Like, she was pregnant, she was trying to raise this kid, and it just, I think it was so impactful. I'm like, if I had a heart, I would shed a tear. Yeah, I think genuinely it's the best mid-credit, end credit. Like, I don't think there's a better way to end the movie.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I'm kind of also glad there was no after credits.
Because, like, at this point, Marvel mid-credit, end credits have been so, like, cheesy and, like, a waste of my time just to sit in theaters to watch.
I mean, they have made that such a staple now. It's crazy, though.
Yeah. Should we talk about, I mean, is there anything, if you let me, David, I could talk about, we already talked about this for like 20 minutes, I think. The good.
Oh, yeah. What else?
The good. I think that's it, man. I can't think of any on the top of my head.
No, I think there's a lot of good, but this is not a perfect movie.
No, of course not.
Yeah. There were definitely some issues with me that sat with me, but I can't say I think I'm kind of nitpicking, but it's
Yeah, no,
because none of it was really enough for me to take me out of the movie. Still like enjoy the movie as fully as possible.
I agree. I agree.
But you see a lot of things where they kind of just threw things in, kind of like the
Yeah,
whole
yeah.
Julia Dreyfus part and things like
Uh
that.
huh. The building of the Thunderbolts, is that what it is?
Essentially,
Yeah, like it's a suicide, almost like the Suicide Squad of the Marvel universe.
right.
Which I'm like, I'm not. I seen the lineup for it, and I'm like, I'm not. Is it a movie or TV show?
I think it's supposed to be a movie.
I am like, I'm not gonna rush to watch that.
Right. Yeah. I think, and you see the build up here too. I was kind of like, I was wondering what kind of things they would tie in for the future of Marvel, but you see the Thunderbolts and then also Armor Wars. With a new character that they added in for this movie was Riri Williams, who's
Yeah.
supposed to be the new Iron Man. In the comics, she's known as Ironheart. She builds her own Tony Stark suit.
I didn't hate her, but
No,
like,
no, yeah. I
she
think
was yeah, fun, interesting character, but like, I feel I wanted more from her. You know what I mean?
right, right, and I think that's the tough part because you don't want to give her too much in a
Exactly.
movie like this. But I think for me, yeah, it's the storyline for her. It was definitely kind of just surface level, skimmed over.
Exactly.
She was there to provide a little more action, a little more,
A little bit more heart, funniness, and stuff like that.
right,
But I'm like, I don't know if she needed to be here. Like, I understand why she had to be there because they gotta make money for other movies. But like, I don't think she needed to be here.
right. I mean, like like the whole story it taps into she's the one who created this device that finds and takes vibranium, and she's some super genius.
Yeah.
Now I think a lot of her character is definitely gonna tie into Armor Wars. I think the rumors surfacing are gonna be like, because in this movie she builds her suit in Wakanda, which
Yeah.
means that her suit is probably vibranium.
No, but they won't let her take that home.
Exactly, precisely.
Yeah.
Like because of like what it's made. I think probably because what it's made of, it's like too precious. They can't let anybody else get it. And I think that's probably gonna tie into Armor Wars or the Thunderbolts, like them trying to
Yeah.
get this suit or like kind of find more access to vibranium or something like that.
Yeah. I thought she was kind of lackluster. I'm like, yeah, she wasn't too grating. Like, oh, like it wasn't too much of whiplash, but like she did stick out.
Yeah, for sure. Now one big question I had throughout this movie was this:
Yeah.
what was Talokan doing during the snap?
Who's Talakan?
The city, the underwater city that Namor is king of.
They were just there, I guess. Like, I'm assuming Namor wasn't snapped for some reason, and
I mean, like I wish, cause like even briefly they, like when Lupita and who was it?
Namor.
No, and Okoye
Yeah.
were talking about like the snap. Oh, like this is what I did. I had to like go far away, all that stuff when like everybody was snapped. But Namor doesn't really touch upon that. He's talking about like all these colonizers who destroyed them, but then he doesn't. Like I'm assuming, unless like Talokan was just untouched by the snap,
Yeah.
then like then he has no reason. But like, wouldn't that be something that his character should like
Mention.
or be worried about? Him
yeah.
he as a ruler, probably might have lost half of his people there.
I completely agree. Completely. I didn't even think about that.
So yeah, I mean that's kind of like just one thought, only because like the other characters brought it up themselves too and talked about it and like talked about the issues there. So I was like, oh, then like what happened with these guys over here? Like were they just untouched? Like things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think ultimately there's a lot of things that were brought up but wasn't really fully delved into. They didn't really dive into a lot of things. And ultimately I saw this whole movie as a mirror for what T'Challa went through in Civil War. The idea of grief and revenge and
Yeah.
going
No,
through.
I see that.
But it's added another layer because her mother died as well.
Yeah. But this movie does this. If anything, that was probably the weakest part of Civil War.
Mm.
That arc. But like,
Yeah,
no,
yeah. But
no, I agree.
so it
Yeah.
felt so it's not, it does not really. But then I was like, oh, is this kind of recycled? Like like you're taking the same main character and putting them through the same type of thing, like issue.
I mean, it's more about grief than anything, David. I don't
Which,
think it's
yeah, I mean,
like, I mean, if your mother died, like they had to kill someone important off for us to feel grief ourselves.
right,
Like, wouldn't revenge be the top of our mind?
right. I mean, you're right. Yeah, I mean, those are like the just little things that came up for me when as I was watching the movie.
No, I agree. Those are all valid points. I only have nitpicky ones. Hello. I thought sorry. You're standing very still. I'm like, oh no, my internet went out. Yeah.
What are some of your nitpicking stuff?
Two things. I don't know what the comic book origin of Namor, his name is, but I thought it was so stupid that like Namor got his like worldly name because of a priest that he was about to murder. He said no more because you will never find love. I'm like you said, is that a pun? I'm like, that's really stupid. I'm like, I don't know. Like his like, what's his name? Like Kachala or something like that. Like it's like really cool. I'm like, but Namor, I'm like no more. I'm like, oh, that's really dumb. I really hope like that was probably like one of the really things that bugged me. The second thing is throughout the whole movie, like Okoye and Shuri are like arguing about like this Iron Man-ish suit that she's building, and like it looks ugly, and I'm praying to God like, oh, like maybe they're gonna make it look better. And like in the end, Shuri, she wears it and basically helps fight the bad guys, and it looks so stupid. Was it just me?
The Iron Man suit at the end?
The blue one that she's wearing. This whatever she's called, Midnight Angel. Or something
stupid. Those, yeah. Yeah, that was a little iffy. But
yeah, I think I don't know if it's a CGI, but it was like too shiny and like, yo, you're Wakanda, like your stuff that you make are really cool. Like it looks realistic, but like, have you played Overwatch?
A little bit, yeah.
You know, who's that Egyptian lady that flies up in the sky and shoots like grenade launchers?
Not really sure, but
like she legit looks like an Overwatch character. I was like, I was so distracted. I'm like, really? Like that? You settled for that? And like she saves Rossi in the end. Yeah. Still wearing that suit. Like Okoye is so. I love like the first two acts of this movie because like she's a badass with a spear and like she's fighting and like I really thought she's gonna beat that the whole movie. She's like fighting this one guy, this bruiser type, and I'm like I thought she's gonna just be smarter than him and still be like nope, she has an Iron Man suit and that's how she wins. And I'm like
pretty much.
Oh, that's really boring.
Yeah, that end war was crazy though. Like everything that was happening.
Yeah,
so much happening.
So much. I was like, okay, that suit is really distracting. But yeah, I mean that from the top of my mind, that's probably the two things that bugged me the most of this movie.
Oh, there's actually one little thing that I couldn't help but notice. It's not really like an issue or anything.
Yeah.
But I noticed,
issue, David.
it's not. It's just like something funny that I realized. It's like
what?
When they first go into Wakanda, or like with Shuri and her mother, and they're like telling the guys to open the gates.
Yeah.
And they're like drumming on it.
The water.
I was like, yeah. Is that like I don't know. Like is that
does that make sense?
Yeah. Like is that necessary? Like could you have done something else?
Like if you miss a beat, do they all die from the force field? I mean, I think it's just culturally like, oh, okay, that looks really interesting and makes you think.
But yeah, I mean that was just one other tiny little thing.
I agree. I'm like, is this stupid or is this cool? I'm like, whatever. It's not too important to think about. I totally agree. That was very like interesting. Like, huh? Okay, that's a choice.
Yeah. So actually, I came across an article that a few articles that did not review this movie well.
Oh, they're wrong. But go on. What did the article say?
One movie professor noted a few things, and also surprisingly, you know who Roger Ebert is, right?
Yeah.
They did not give good ratings for this movie either. They gave it a 1.5 stars. But
really, out of what, 4 or 5?
think it's usually 5.
4, right? 5? Wow,
Yeah.
that's pretty bad.
Yeah, surprisingly. But some of the issues that they both come up with are these. Now, one of the big things that the first article I read was that he took issue with the fact that the ideologies behind this movie were not met, or like it didn't touch upon like all the issues that were brought up in the first Black Panther. Most notably, things like uh, the whole idea of colonization and how Wakanda has, and like how did Wakanda actually help its border countries? What is it doing for them and things like that? And like, I mean, for me, like I don't know, that wasn't the point of this movie. So I feel
No,
like
that's bro. You want a textbook? Go. You could write that yourself. That's not what a movie's about.
so like yeah, it continues on and says like, oh, like, you know, for these colonized countries, places, you know, like even places like Talokan, things like that, their first and main people that they fought against or they should be fighting against are these colonizers. And like, so like why were they fighting each other instead of these colonizers? And it's just like, that's I think you're missing the whole point of this movie if that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, what?
Yeah, I mean, what are you
like? That's the last thing I wanted to see. More politicalness inside of Marvel, inside a movie like the.
Right. Yeah. No, I understand that some movies need to have that, you know, convey some kind of message, but I don't think that was what should have been.
Point. No, definitely. That's just nitty picky. That's nitty gritty. So.
Yeah, seriously. Like, and another along those lines, one of the issues that this particular author had was that he said that this movie painted Talokan, you know, these people who were supposed to depict like Latino people, as primitive, you know, like they're just bloodthirsty people who just want to have war. But no, that's completely wrong from my point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, it feels like this guy didn't really listen to the first half of the movie.
No.
After he said something like that. So, I mean, like, what about you? What do you think?
I don't know if they're primitive. Like, yeah, I think Namor's insane, and he convinced his people that he's a god, and that's what his goal is. Like, you know, they made points to see, like, no, there are people trading in the marketplace, living their lives. And, like, these are real people, and like, they worship Namor as a god, and that's what their god wants. And I don't see it as primitive, but like, what do they want to see? Another Wakanda underwater? Like, that's not what I want to see.
Yeah, no, exactly. They're different. They were able to survive 100 centuries, you know, with the way that they lived, and I think it gives them a new level of like, resourcefulness almost.
Oh yeah,
like
definitely.
They're stronger than a lot of nations that have deteriorated on the surface.
Yeah,
they've survived in a way because they haven't been touched, but also because they have access to vibranium as well.
Yeah, and I love the water bombs they use. I thought that was so clever.
Yes, yeah, and a lot of like those water masks that they had too. I thought a lot of the things that they used, I thought it was great. You know,
interesting, very interesting.
And the fact that they turn blue when they're in
outside
the land,
war.
I was like, oh wow, that's kind of
very distinctive, very interesting. And like, I mean, one Namor's weakness is his dryness. Like, if he's too chapped, he'll die. And I'm like, that's kind of dumb, but like, I mean, he needs some kind of weakness,
right? So on top of that, I think the author also kind of points out the fact that Namor is kind of very flip-floppy. He's inconsistent, and he's contradicting with himself. Because he goes from this, like, he's kind of like a warmonger to when he's with Shuri, he's kind of this peaceful guy trying to show off that. And then he goes back to being a warmonger. But yeah, I mean, I don't agree with any of what this guy's saying. But
like, I think even in the comics, like, Namor is not a nice guy. He's kind of crazy and like he's a dick.
Yeah.
And like, Namor in this is kind of a dick. Like, the only reason they stopped the war is because he was going to die.
Exactly. I mean, the whole point, the reason why he was so angry is because like now, even though like nobody knew about this nation or like this underwater world, he was afraid that because like these people were able to find vibranium, they were going to find them eventually. Like he just wanted to prevent that. He wanted to protect his people and keep his borders closed.
Oh yeah.
and that's what contradicted him from Wakanda. And yeah, I mean, this guy definitely he wanted a much more political movie,
Yeah,
obviously.
which is Marvel's never gonna do. Disney's never gonna do.
No, definitely not because their audience is so broad. It's they can't do that.
No, for sure, definitely. Like China's not gonna watch that movie. Yeah,
Yeah.
solid movie, David. I mean, we've been talking about 40 minutes, but how
Mm.
would you pitch Black Panther 3? What do you I mean? What do you think's gonna happen next to Wakanda? And like,
Oh,
I'm-
actually, before we pitch
oh
that,
yeah, yeah.
um, do you want to hear about what the original idea was had if Chadwick Boseman were still around?
Oh shoot, yeah, of course. What would it have been about?
So
What would it have been about?
I think the original script idea for this was supposed to touch upon T'Challa coming back from the snap, and him
Mhm.
dealing with the aftermath of that, and it had to deal with a lot of his paternal relationship with his son, and how he was gonna handle
Ah.
that, how go about that.
So he
things
still
like
has a
that.
son.
Right? Yeah, he would still
Okay.
have a son. So I mean that I think that was gonna be the core of it, and still bring in the fact that Namor wanted to attack Wakanda. I think personally seeing T'Challa's Black Panther fight Namor would have been so amazing. But
That would have been fun.
yeah.
But I would honestly I prefer this movie.
I think the tone of this movie was a lot deeper and better, in my
Mhm.
opinion. And
I don't-
it sucks to say that it only came
Yeah.
out because of what happened.
Mhm.
But that I mean the way that they were able to approach it, they did a great job with it.
No, I totally agree. Yeah, I mean, that sounds interesting, but yeah, I wouldn't kill for that.
hmm But yeah. So with Black Panther 3, what are your thoughts then?
I don't know because the next big baddie is what's his name? Kang, right?
Right. Yep. And from the looks of it, there's probably not going to be or if we're going to try to go chronological order, it's probably not going to be another Black Panther movie until after these new Avengers movies.
Yeah. I wonder if they're gonna mess with time a little. I mean, like clearly, like it looks like they're trying to build up to like a young Avengers,
Yep.
which is like I'm not like ooh I'm super excited for. I'm like oh there's gonna be Miss Marvel, Spider Man, and like Thor's little daughter and stuff like that.
Mm.
And I'm like I don't know if I really want to watch a young cast of actors, but
No.
I wonder if Kang is gonna like mess up with like time somehow, and like T'Challa's young son grows up to adult, and we see that, so we have like an adult Black Panther.
Oh, you mean by the time Black Panther 3 comes out?
Yeah, I don't want another snap or something like that, but like
But something similar to that you're saying, like where
exactly.
like it kind of messes with the time where people are either fast forwarded or like they stay in time and like
Or I don't know, like maybe like alternate universes are clashing and stuff like that.
right.
Because multiverse talked about what do you call it when like two universes are clashing together, two realities.
Oh, dang it.
There's a whole comic. I totally forgot.
Right, it's a conversion.
Convergence. Like I imagine something like that. Like even if it's not this universe, like we're gonna see like a T'Challa Jr. as a Black Panther fighting Shuri, which would be super interesting. I would see that. I
yeah.
would want.
So do you think M'Baku's gonna become a Black Panther though?
Oh
with
yeah.
the way that
Oh no, I don't think that's M'Baku though.
no, okay.
No, that homie, no, he's good with his cane. He's good with his stick. I would watch an M'Baku TV show or a movie. I would watch that to like no end.
I think that would be fun. I think yeah, it would be a short series though. I think.
No, that'd be so funny. Like when he walks into the throne room just eating a carrot and he's late, he's just like he's just like doesn't care. And I'm like, yo, I love this character. He's Winston, what's his name?
Winston Duke.
Winston Duke is just he's having the best time of his life.
um yeah, I mean it's kind of you're trying to find the next big bad for like the solo movies, right? So I just trying to think of like what other bad guys for Black Panther there are in the in the comics, but I'm not too familiar, so I can't really say.
No,
Um,
honestly, I don't know if I we could talk about Marvel. Like, I think they should stop making movies and like focus on their TV show being better.
wow, okay.
You know what I mean? Like, how do I say this? Like, even if it's like a 45-minute like movie on Netflix, I don't know. Is there? It could be because I'm like there's way too much Marvel stuff, and I'm not gonna watch everything.
Mm.
I kind of want there to be less, but more higher quality.
No, I get I get what you're saying. Cause like
Yeah.
yeah, everything's getting so saturated. They're just
Oh
pumping out
yeah.
so much.
Exactly.
And the harder part is like everything's supposed to connect supposedly, you know.
Yeah, which I'm like, that's a lot of strings that you're going in through, and I'm like, I don't know if I care enough.
I'm
It's
like
yeah.
so curious what Kevin Feige's like whiteboard looks like with everything just like mapped out right now. It's just it must be so crazy.
Yeah, but it's like I've maybe watched from all the Netflix series that came out since 2021. Since the pandemic, I've seen like maybe 2 out of like what 20.
Mm.
So I have like no idea what I know they're building up to Black to Thunderbolt, and I really don't care. But like I don't know. What was your question again?
So I mean like
Yeah.
the just the idea of the villain for the next Black Panther movie. Actually, I came across 2 that would be kind of big names.
Mm-hmm.
Doctor Doom
Oh, that'd be so good.
and Magneto, and with the introduction of X-Men in this new
Oh, and
MCU.
Vibranium, that'd be so crazy.
That would be an interesting one.
I mean, I don't know, like, oh man, DC, get your shit together, man. That's all I could say. But like, oh, when they introduced like Fantastic Four and X-Men, do you think it'd be good, or do you think people be like, "Ugh, the superhero bubbles popped finally"?
Yeah.
But it's due time. It's been like what 20 years, 10 years.
It's been about 20 years now. Or it's closing in on 20 years for sure.
That's a long time.
And, you know, I think people have been waiting for the X-Men to come in and, you know, especially the Fantastic Four. And, you know, in the comics, they are such huge parts of that whole main storyline. So it's so hard to see them in this universe without them.
Oh, yeah.
So I believe when they do come, it might give the MCU a little bit of a push.
Oh,
but
yeah. Another revamp. Another, like, I don't know.
Sort of like a quick revival, like, you know, things like that. But you know, it's really tough to see anything past Endgame being at that level anymore.
Oh, yeah. I agree. I don't think there's anything that's coming out from Marvel. I'm like, yo, I'm so excited to watch that since this movie came out. You know?
Honestly, I mean, like the only real thing that I am excited to see is like maybe Spider-Man, just because I love the character so much, and
Tom Holland kills it, and like they ended up in a really interesting part of his life.
Exactly, I think the way they ended it is what I wanted to see. To be honest,
definitely. Me too.
Kind of like how Spider-Man is that street level hero, like nobody really knows him. He does everything on his own, and that brings him
his
back.
Life sucks. It's like really depressing, which is like peak Spider-Man.
Right. So it really brings him down to that true character form. I feel like he has no aid with the Avengers, you know, things like that. Like he's just himself. So like that, I mean, that story arc I'm curious about, but other than that, yeah, even the Avengers movies, aside from the fact that Jonathan Majors is going to be the main villain,
which I think he's going to kill, but
I don't know. It's not too much where I'm dying to go see.
Yeah.
I say that, and then I'm gonna go see every single movie.
And I'll let you know how it goes. You let me know how it goes, because I am definitely not gonna like the next one's what, Ant-Man?
Yeah.
I've seen the trailer and like, cool. That's like the only phrase I could say. I'm like, yeah, that looks like a Marvel movie.
You know, you see the way that Marvel's trying to like grab you into these movies, keep you in it. It's like with these little team ups here and there.
Yeah. Which is a smart thing.
Which is the best thing, because like at this point, like for guys like you and me, like we've seen the bulk of it. The important parts, the important characters really live out what they were supposed to live out. Mm-hmm. And the best way to keep any of like these older fans to it is, you know, keep tying in more characters in a way.
Oh yeah. like seeing a Spider-Man and Defenders team up, that'd be really great. Or like a Spider-Man / Daredevil movie, that'd be fun.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like, even like, I mean, the next thing I'm definitely curious about is Deadpool.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be. But like, what's his name? Logan is gonna be in it apparently.
Yeah, Hugh Jackman's coming
Hugh
back.
Jackman, which would be great. You know, Henry Cavill would be a great Wolverine.
He's too
old.
No, it's not that. He's just too good
big.
looking.
He's too good looking. Yeah, no, you're right.
Not to say Hugh Jackman isn't good looking, but
can you imagine that being a problem in life? Like, oh no, you're too handsome. You're too like suave. You can't.
You know, sometimes that is. I mean, Wolverine's like an animal, man. He's supposed to be like
short animal. Yeah, no, I totally agree. But Hugh Jackman is not. He's this handsome.
Yeah, seriously, he's the exact
Broadway
opposite.
singer.
Which is even crazier because, like, when you think of Wolverine now, you think of Hugh Jackman.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to talk about Black Panther?
I mean, I don't know. It's kind of tough to see where this storyline is going to continue on, especially because of what's going to happen throughout the whole MCU storyline. So I think we're going to have to table that.
Definitely. I agree. That's a whole conversation itself.
Yep.
So, David, you know, as we wrap up this episode, where can our wonderful, beautiful listeners find us?
Well, you guys can always find us on our Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. Just look for Repitch Podcast. And also, if you guys have any, comments for us, shoot us an email at repitchpodcast@gmail.com. And as always, before we go out, big shout out to our friend Joe Yoo, Mr. Panda Mix on SoundCloud, for helping us with the sound editing and just cleaning up our voices and everything, and with the intro and outro music.
Yeah, and thank you guys so much for tuning in. We upload an episode twice a week. We repitch a Stephen King short story. It was horrible, but definitely a fun repitch. David does it. You guys see if I gave him the green light or not.
Yes.
But yeah. To wrap up, I realized I already said two of the best quotes in the movie. But I'm gonna end up with this quote. T'Challa was truly noble. Are you gonna be like him, or are you gonna take care of business? Yeah. Michael B. Jordan killing it.
All right,
man. We'll see you guys later.
Thank you guys.
Wakanda forever.